If you played a video game before, or if you tried to make one, then you know how many assets are required to fill different levels of a video game. The same can be said about CGI environments in movies. But what if I told you that studios can't afford to make all of those themselves nowadays, simply because they don't possibly have enough manpower to finish their projects under the required deadline? And the solution to this problem comes in the form of outsourcing. So what is outsourcing, why is it important, and how it became a thing in the first place? Before we continue, I wanted to let you know guys that the Blender market is having right now a huge summer sale with 25% discount on thousands of Blender products from add-ons, courses, shaders, you name it. Also, if you don't know where to start, I have in the description of this video a list of the best add-ons and courses that can take your projects to the next level. So without further ado, let's jump right in. You see, outsourcing 3D asset creation in the game development and VFX industry began as a response to the growing demand of high quality for intricate and complicated 3D assets. Also, there was a need to manage costs and meet deadlines. I assume you know this, but in the early days of video game development and VFX, most work was done in-house by relatively small teams. However, as you might expect, as the complexity of games and visual effects increased, especially during the 2000s, studios began to struggle with the sheer volume of assets required to build expansive game worlds or create visually stunning films. And the industry faced the challenge of creating large amounts of detailed assets such as characters, environments, vehicles, and props, while also keeping production within the budget and under the deadline. The challenge was compounded by the rise of 3D graphics, which demanded more specialized skills and longer development time. Hence the introduction of problems in the industry like crunch, working overtime, burnout, and all the other problems developers and artists can deal with. So, as the demand for sophisticated visuals grew, which is noticeable, especially if you compare a game asset that you can see in a game from the 2020s compared to a game asset from the 2000s, you will see a massive difference in poly count and texture quality. So as a consequence, larger studios started to explore the possibility of outsourcing some of the more labor-intensive tasks. And this, I would say, for the most part, is creating 3D assets and environments, especially for video game projects. And I would say this is a smart thing to do, because it allowed studios to allocate resources more effectively, focusing their in-house teams on core creative tasks while outsourcing repetitive or technically complex work. For example, instead of wasting time of environment artists on creating small assets like pots, tables, chairs, and so on, they can focus on the big picture and how the environment can help the game to be more engaging. And even though this is a good idea, the initial outsourcing efforts were often limited to specific tasks, such as modeling or texturing, and they were typically handled by smaller and specialized studios. Generally speaking, these outsourcing studios, often based in countries like India, China, and Eastern Europe, quickly developed expertise in producing high-quality 3D assets at a fraction of the cost, compared to the cost of in-house production. So instead of spending the expensive time and resources of the main studio, they buy the time of outsourcing studio artists, which is way cheaper. And starting from the early 2000s, outsourcing had become an integral part of the production pipelines of many game studios and VFX houses. Over time, the relationship between major studios and outsourcing companies evolved from just simple task delegation to more integrated partnerships, and some outsourcing studios started expanding their capabilities, offering a broad range of services, including animation, rigging, and even full asset production pipelines. This allowed them to take on larger portions of a project, and sometimes even handling entire sequences or game levels. And let me tell you something, the outsourcing model proved to be successful that it became a standard practice in the industry, leading to the growth of a bunch of specialized studios that continue to play a crucial role in different production pipelines in video games or even in films. And I think this shift not only allowed the creation of more ambitious projects, but also helps create more jobs in the industry itself, giving smaller studios, experienced talent, and experienced studios that have a lot of work on their plate, a bigger access to talents and artists from different levels and all around the world. Now, if you're thinking about joining this business, or you're just curious about its ins and outs, outsourcing studios in the game development and the VFX industry are specialized companies that provide a wide range of services to large studios especially, helping them meet demands or complex and resource-intensive projects. And these studios, simply put, are typically contacted to create specific elements or perform particular tasks that are either too time-consuming, which is obvious, or technically challenging, or maybe outside the primary focus of the hiring studio. And if you think about it, one of the core services, as we said, that are offered by outsourcing studios is the creation of 3D assets, which can include a variety of objects needed for a game or a film. And these assets range from highly detailed character models, complete with textures, materials, and sometimes they do even rigging and animation, in addition to creating environment elements like buildings, landscapes, or props. On the other hand, in the realm of animation, outsourcing studios can be tasked with animating characters, creatures, and different objects, bringing them to life according to the creative direction provided by the main studio. And generally speaking, this may include everything from simple character movements to complex sequences involving multiple characters and dynamic interactions. The outsourcing studio might also create and animate visual effects, such as explosions, magical effects, weather phenomenon, or dynamic elements that require specialized skills and software. And some outsourcing studios go beyond asset creation and animation to offer entire production pipelines, handling the entire segments of a project. This can include not only the creation of assets, but also their integration into the final product, working closely with the main studio's technical and creative teams to ensure consistency in the quality and the creative vision. Now let's give you an example. In game development, an outsourcing studio might be responsible for designing and populating entire levels from the ground up, including terrains, buildings, characters, props, and other interactive elements. Also, one important example, as we said, is the VFX industry, where outsourcing studios often contribute to the creation of complex CGI sequences for films and television especially, which we are seeing a lot of work coming from. This can involve not only the creation of digital assets, but also compositing, masking, rotoscoping, tracking, and other stuff. So basically they help bring CGI elements with real-life footage or live-action footage to create a final product. And the outsourcing studio's role might include everything from adding digital crowds to enhancing a scene with realistic environments and creatures. I hope you guys found this video useful and informative. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You can also check some of our previous videos. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.